Penguin Audio presents Conservatives Without Conscience by John Dean. Read by Robertson Dean. Preface. Contemporary conservatives have become extremely contentious, confrontational, and aggressive in nearly every area of politics and governing. Today, they have a tough guy, and in few instances, a tough gal, attitude, an arrogant and antagonistic style, along with a narrow outlook, intolerant of those who challenge their extreme thinking. Conservatives are markedly nasty and vicious in their politics, with incivility now their norm. During the Father Bush period, there was a presumption of civility, Norman Ornstein of the American Enterprise Institute observes. But we lost it under Clinton, when conservatives relentlessly attacked his presidency, and then the present President Bush deliberately chose a strategy of being a divider rather than a uniter. Even more troubling, the right-wing presidency of George W. Bush and Richard B. Cheney has taken positions that are in open defiance of international treaties or blatant violations of domestic laws, while pushing the limits of presidential power beyond the parameters of the Constitution. It is aided and abetted in these actions by a conservative Republican Congress that refuses to check or balance the president. These patterns were apparent long before the terror attacks on September 11, 2001, but the right wing's bellicose response to the events of that day has escalated into a false claim of legitimacy. Many authors and journalists have described the extreme hubris now present in Washington, along with the striking abuses of power. While some of this activity has ostensibly been undertaken in the name of fighting terrorists, much of it is just good old-fashioned power corruption. Conservatives Without Conscience, however, is not a book about Bush and Cheney. My venture here is not to expose more malfeasance, misfeasance, or nonfeasance in places high or low in Washington, nor even to try to catalog it, for the gist of what is occurring under conservative Republican rule is all too obvious. Although this is a report that cannot be given without frequent references to the administration's disquieting politics and governing, my effort, fundamentally, is to understand them, to explain why they are happening, while placing them all in a larger context, including the particular events that initially prompted my inquiry about people with whom I once thought I shared beliefs. Frankly, when I started writing this book, I had a difficult time accounting for what had become of conservatism, or, for that matter, the Republican Party. I went down a number of dead-end streets looking for answers before finally discovering a true explanation. My finding, simply stated, is the growing presence of conservative authoritarianism. Conservatism has noticeably evolved from its so-called modern phase, 1950 to 1994, into what might be called a postmodern period, 1994 to the present, and in doing so, it has regressed to its earliest authoritarian roots. Authoritarianism is not well understood and seldom discussed in the context of American government and politics, yet it now constitutes the prevailing thinking and behavior among conservatives. Regrettably, empirical studies reveal, however, that authoritarians are frequently enemies of freedom, anti-democratic, anti-equality, highly prejudiced, mean-spirited, power-hungry, Machiavellian, and amoral. They are also often conservatives without conscience, who are capable of plunging this nation into disasters the likes of which we have never known. Although I have only recently learned the correct term for describing this type of behavior and come to understand the implications of such authoritarian thinking, I was familiar with the personality type from my years in the Nixon White House. We had plenty of authoritarians in the Nixon administration, from the president on down. In fact, authoritarian thinking was the principal force behind almost everything that went wrong with Nixon's presidency. I had had little contact with my former acquaintances, or with their new authoritarian friends and associates, until the early 1990s, when they decided to attack me and my wife in an effort to rewrite history at our expense. By then, I had left public life for a very comfortable and private existence in the world of business, but they forced me back into the public square to defend myself and my wife from their false charges. In returning, I discovered how contemptible and dangerous their
Sample complete. Ready to continue?